We're going to wrap up the autonomic nervous system with this short video that's comparing and contrasting visceral and somatic pathways and reflexes. We've got a single outcome here. So to start off, we need to understand the anatomy of the somatic nervous system, and this diagram shows it here. What's really nice about the somatic nervous system, it's got a single neuron, okay? And that neuron, which you can see here, hopefully, has these little bluish gray things surrounding it. That's myelin. So it's a long myelinated neuron. It releases acetylcholine that will bind to a nicotinic cholinergic receptor on the skeletal muscle cell. This is the exact same pathway as the parasympathetic nervous system's preganglionic neuron, okay? The only difference is there's not a second neuron for the somatic nervous system. This signal travels very quickly. That's important, especially when you think about reflexes and, like if you step on something painful, if you've just got one myelinated neuron, that signal is going to travel very quickly. So just a quick summary of the difference between the somatic and the autonomic nervous system pathways. They're both efferent, but the somatic only has one motor neuron. It's entirely myelinated. It releases acetylcholine. So that's similar, but not the exact same as the autonomic nervous system, which has two neurons most of the time. And there's a combination of myelinated and unmyelinated neurons. And these neurons will either release acetylcholine or norepinephrine. So then let's talk about the reflexes. Okay, so with the visceral and the somatic reflexes, so visceral, remember, a reflex is involuntary, always involuntary. It doesn't matter what it is involving, but a visceral reflex is an involuntary change of organ function. That's already involuntary, so, but what's happening here is, blood pressure's low, we're gonna do things to increase blood pressure. You just ate, a whole bag of Starburst, high blood glucose, you're going to release insulin to help get that blood glucose or help to get that glucose out of your bloodstream and into your muscle cells. Somatic, well, normally you can control your skeletal muscles. This is an involuntary response. So when you get whacked on the knee, when you go for your physical, you have that leg extension, that knee extension. Okay, you didn't cause that to happen. Your central nervous system just responded to that. You step on a Lego because you're at my house and there are Legos everywhere. You pick up, you step away from that Lego. That's a reflex. You didn't think about it. It just happened. So with a visceral reflex arc, it's similar to somatic reflex arc that we've talked about. Starts from the spinal cord because sensory information is being sent through an afferent pathway. There's an integration process that goes on, and then there's some sort of efferent pathway for that output. Now, I want to be clear. It's not always the spinal cord that gets this information, and it's not always the brain that gets this information. So for example, I just mentioned blood glucose. That actually doesn't even go to the spinal cord. Pancreas takes care of everything. It senses, it integrates, it responds. But more often than not, these reflexes will actually go to the spinal cord. Again, rapid, involuntary, but there is a specific response when we're talking about visceral reflex arcs. You could also say the same thing about a somatic reflex arc. So with that, can you do these three things? Can you compare and contrast the anatomy of the autonomic and somatic nervous systems? Can you describe the differences between a somatic and visceral reflex? And can you describe a visceral reflex arc?